Welcome to Conversations for the Amazon We Want. My name is Gustavo, and in this episode, I'm speaking to Emma Torres, Strategic Coordinator of the Science Panel for the Amazon and the Science Panel for the Congo Basin, as well as Vice President of the Americas and Strategic Partnerships at the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. In this conversation, we will dive into Emma's background and career and explore her efforts to mobilize science-based action for critical tropical forest biomes around the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations for the Amazon We Want. My name is Gustavo Nascimento, and I'm a member of the Science Panel for the Amazon Youth Advisory Committee, and I'm also an environmental studies and anthropology student at Brandeis University. I'm deeply committed to environmental and social justice. I founded a reforestation project in Sao Paulo, mobilizing over 100 volunteers and planting around 900 native seedlings, and to help restore part of the Atlantic forest in the city. I have also worked with UNEP's Children Youth Major Group, advocating for youth leadership and in global environmental agendas. My research focuses on the Rights to Nature movement and on preserving oral traditions as a way to foster cultural continuity while also promoting environmental protection. Today, I have the honor to speak with Emma Torres, the Strategic Coordinator of the Science Panel for the Amazon, the Science Panel for the Congo Basin, co-chair of the SDSN Amazonia, and the Vice President of the Americas and Strategic Partnerships at the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Emma has built a remarkable career in the United Nations system and global sustainability diplomacy. She has coordinated major initiatives, including Amazonia Without Myths, Our Own Agenda, and Latin America and the Caribbean, a biodiversity superpower, and has played a central role in connecting science, policy, and regional leadership. Emma, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Gustavo. It's a great pleasure to be with you. You know, I'm a great fan of our Youth Advisory Committee. I believe that it's brought tremendous energy to the Science Panel of the Amazon, so it's wonderful to be with you today.
Okay, to begin, we've had such a rich and global career from the UN to scientific diplomacy across multiple continents. And could you tell us a bit more about your journey and what originally inspired you to dedicate your career to sustainable development?
Well, I studied economics and studied in Europe, studied in Spain, England, and France. But I had a commitment with my father. And the commitment with my father is that I was going to go back to Bolivia and work in Bolivia. And unfortunately, when I finished my career, my father was in exile in Argentina. So I couldn't go back to Bolivia. And I was desperate because, you know, all my classmates had jobs. I had no job because I didn't apply to anything. And I went to my professor, who was a fantastic professor. He eventually became the governor of the Central Bank of Spain.
Wow.
And he said to me, and I was almost in tears, I said, Professor Rojo, what am I going to do? I don't have a job. He said, Emma, you're an economist, and a good one, he said, and you speak 5 languages. Go and work at the UN. And I said, okay. And then I applied. And at that time, when you apply, it was there, you send a letter, you know, you don't know if they reached there or whatever. In the meantime, I went to South America. I went first to Rio, my favorite city in the world, and then I went to Buenos Aires. And one day I got a call from the office of the UN in Buenos Aires. And they said, come for an interview. Okay, so I went for the interview. A few people interviewed me, and I was in the long list. And then I moved to the short list. And then I moved to the very short list, and then they shipped me to New York for the final round. So in the final round, I was very inspired because I spoke with amazing people. That in that time at the UN, the people that interview you were very senior people.
I see.
And not just personnel. Now it's become more like America, which is personnel runs the show to the interviews. At that time, really the senior people were interviewing the future leaders of the UN, which is, I think, very wise.
Yeah.
And I was interviewed by interesting people. And the ones we were in the final round, we always used to have drinks at the end and compare notes because we knew some of us might not be recruited, but we became very good friends.
They
were from all over the world. And then we all had the same program, except one day I had a different program that they had. I was supposed to go and meet with this lady, which her name is Joan Margaret Anstey. She was the most senior woman at the UN, and a very elegant lady that was very close to the Secretary General. So actually, my interview didn't go so well at the beginning because I was supposed to be there at 9 o'clock, and I missed an elevator because I thought she was working in the UN building, but actually she was in the UNDP building, which was across the street. And although I had come much earlier, when I arrived, it was 5 minutes late. And I knocked the door, and she was looking at her watch. And she said, our meeting was at 9 o'clock. I said, I'm very sorry, Mrs. Anstey, but I took the wrong elevator. She said, I don't want to hear stories about the elevators. The meeting was at 9 o'clock. I said, I apologize. And what else I could say, you know? And I was very young, and I was scared, and then we talked in many languages. I left. We went to have drinks with the group, and I said, well, I'm finished. This is it, you know, for me. So it probably my last round. Anyhow, to make the story short, I was recruited, and I was recruited to work with her. And you have no idea. It was the best thing that happened to me because she was very tough. Everything had to be punctual. She was very strong on protocol, but I learned with her the best. You know, it's the best school.
Yeah.
So, but I spent with her 6 months, and then I moved to work with the head of the Latin America Bureau, who was a former foreign minister of Colombia, a brilliant Don Augusto Ramirez Ocampo, and he had started the peace process in Central America. I knew nothing about Central America, and he was putting together his team. And everybody wanted to be on that team because, you know, he's the boss. He was the special envoy of the Secretary General for Peace Process. So everybody, I didn't want to because I knew nothing about Central America, and I was in my little corner.
Yeah.
It was January. It was a big snowstorm. And he lived near the UN, I lived near the UN. Everybody went home because they were supposed to be leave, you know. And so we stayed, and I was sitting in my desk, and then he comes to my office. And I look at him. He was very elegant, and he says to me, Emma, he said, yes, Don Augusto, you know I'm putting together my team for Central America. Yeah, everybody knew that. Yes, I know. And then he said, well, I've been thinking, and I would like you to be on the team.
Wow.
I said, great. What am I going to say, right?
Yeah.
It was the best possible assignment because I was the bottom of the pyramid, but we went through all the negotiations. You know, we used to go one country to the next, and we put together the peace plan. This was January. We had the peace plan for April. It was passed by the General Assembly. He negotiated with the governments, and we did all the work. And you know, and then it was a big team, but I worked very closely with him. And the peace process was accepted, and $100 million were put to start Central America process, the Central America implementation part. So Don Augusto came again to my office and said, do you want to work on that? And I said no, because I felt that I really didn't want to work in Central America. I was happy to have that experience of working on a peace process. It was fantastic. But then, you know, he said, okay, no, well, you go back to do your work, which seemed pretty boring at that point. and then I said, well, I can do any other exciting thing that is like Central America. And there was an economist who came for these talks that we had at the UN, external people that came to talk, and I went. And he was brilliant, and he said that environment and economics were not in speaking terms. And this is the major conflict that is going to emerge in the future. I said, that conflict I like. So I went and I said to Don Augusto, I want to work on this.
Yeah.
And he said, fine. And I started to research and understood that this was very important. And there was not a subject yet. It was, like he said, like that economist said, it was a potential conflict, but there was not courses, there was nothing. And I did some research. There was a lot of environmentalists and, of course, a lot of economists, but there was not the mixture, right?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because at that time, Professor Sachs was already working in Bolivia. And so I started to, you know, be kind of friendly with him. He was at Harvard. And I said, Jeff, you know, this professor says that this major issue of conflict between environment and economics. He said, yeah. And then He didn't pay me much attention, but like a few months later, he said, there's going to be a course on environmental economics at Harvard, put together by 4 schools. Do you want to join? I said, yes. So I went, I took that course. Then I took another one on climate change. So by the time I came back to UNDP, I was the only one who knew about environment and economics. So they gave me all the assignments. And then it was the moment that the whole thing was getting momentum.
Yeah.
So that's the way I end up working on sustainability. So, and it's been the main focus of my career after that.
Yeah. Do you have an assignment that you still remember doing, like something, like a particular thing about that work that stood out to you?
Of all my work on that, but
that particular set of assignments of environmental
and the beginning,
economic,
Well, some of the reports you mentioned are part of that. Because, for instance, what we did with our own agenda, the Brundtland Commission had come up with a report about environment and development in a way. Not really development, more environment and economics and growth, environment and growth. And they began with this big report, and we felt that this report was very much north-oriented. It was not taking into account the view of the South.
Yeah.
You know, I was very fortunate because all my bosses at the UN were very charismatic leaders, political leaders. And so he felt that, this is all the North, this is not the South. So we talked with the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, who was also friends with my boss. He came to New York, we had a talk, and he said, why don't we do our own agenda? And that's the production of that report. It's called Our Own Agenda, and it's basically the views of the South on these issues of environment and development. And that was fantastic because, again, we mobilized former presidents, writers, all sort of interesting thinkers of the this was basically Latin America, and the Caribbean. We had, for instance, Ciridad Rampal, who had been, Foreign Affairs Minister of Guyana, but also of the Commonwealth, brilliant person. So we produced that report. So I saw the power of the convening that UN had. Because, we will call these leaders and they will come. And they will sit and talk to us, and we did. So the next thing we did of that after our own agenda was this Amazonia without myths. Because when we were doing our own agenda, we identified which were the critical ecosystems in the region. And one was the Amazon, the other is the Pantanal. Mata Atlantica was already practically gone. So we said, is the Pantanal, is the Chocó, is the Amazon. So we decided to go with the Amazon. And we convened former presidents to be on the strategic committee of the 8 countries and some leaders, thinkers. We had Garcia Marquez.
Wow.
Yeah, we had Garcia Marquez, who was, can you imagine, Garcia Marquez coming to our meetings? I was like looking at him, and he was fantastic. He was wonderful. He was a natural storyteller because, we were walking and he was telling you stories, like little short stories. And actually, he was not allowed to have a visa to the United States, but my boss, together with the Secretary General, got him the visa to come.
I see.
And he was very happy because, I walked with him in the streets and he was looking at the building. He was like a kid, looking at the buildings. He was so happy. And he wrote the foreword.
Wow.
All that. And it's beautiful, the foreword.
Wow.
It's very beautiful.
I would
you
love
have
to
to read the foreword.
Yeah.
It's one page and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know what he starts? The oldest ceramic in the continent is in the Amazon, which proves that people live in the Amazon.
Yeah.
It was not an intact forest.
Yeah.
People live there. It was the oldest ceramic is there.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and this is his quote.
Yeah,
so anyhow, so there was a lot of discussions. What it should be called, the book, and then, one this, the other. And then, he said, there's too many myths about the Amazon. They're not talking about the real Amazon. And that's where the title comes, Amazonia Without Myths.
I see.
So really go into the depth, what is the Amazon?
I see.
It was the objective.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience. And then later, I decided to work on, again, when the Inter-American Development Bank provided the resources, the president was very supportive of us. And it was, again, it was a lot of deforestation, a lot of problems, on environmental problems. And we decided to have this report, which was basically to make the case that the biggest asset in the region was biodiversity. And we put together a team to sort of see the value of biodiversity, the contribution of biodiversity, the potential of biodiversity for the region, and that biodiversity should be the engine of growth. And then it came again the battle of the titles. So, the scientists, they didn't like the title that we'd have at the end.
Yeah.
The scientists didn't like the title. I had a team that suggested that we agreed it should be Latin America and a biodiversity superpower. The scientist says, no, that's not look so good. So we had many titles. We went to the leadership, and the leadership immediately, political leaders are political, right? So immediately they said, Amazonia is the superpower, perfect. And that's the way and it's very grabbing, because it is, that we are a superpower. In biodiversity.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, and I think that the part about the ceramics connects to this whole idea of Amazonia being a superpower in biodiversity and also culture.
In culture, exactly. But I think that's these are experiences really from the region. But I also led the Global Environment Facility program of the UNDP, which covers globally, and I had a team of 60 people that they were brilliant technical people, but they cover all over the world. We had $1.6 billion $1.2 billion of operation. So we had programs all over the world. The technical people work, and they only invite me when there were problems. So I had to go to one of the most problematic ones, and it was in the Caspian Sea.
I see.
And we were trying to put together a project with the riparian countries to protect the flyways that come from the north, as well as the sturgeon. And the countries couldn't agree.
What countries were those?
Those are Iran, Russia.
Oh, I see.
But it's the Caspian countries, right? They couldn't agree, and it was a joint project with the World Bank, and they were not agreeing. And then they said, Emma, you have to go. And I really was very reluctant to go, because it was far away. My son was still young, but I said, okay. The head of our office was a friend of mine, Michael von Schulenberg. He was a brilliant. And then I called Michael. I said, Michael, they say I should go. Yes, come, and then maybe you visit me, and we'll do something here. Anyhow, I went there, and it was fantastic, because it's probably one of the most interesting experiences. Because I saw the power of the UN. Michael was very respected in Iran, and they trusted him. But he also came from a family that was diplomats, and his uncle was a famous ambassador of Germany that served in Russia, served in many places, and he was very prestigious. So the day we had the first meeting, we went to Ramsar, which is in the Caspian Sea. I arrived to Tehran, and then we went to Ramsar. So when I arrived to Ramsar, we had cocktails, because the meeting started the next day. So we started shaking hands with all the representatives. And I would say, I'm Emma Torres, I'd say, yes, whatever. And then they will come to Michael von Schulenberg, and the Russians, von Schulenberg, are you related to this ambassador? He said, it's my uncle.
Wow.
And they were always, so we got, and I said to Mike, I sort of used kind of a burqa, because, that's the way women wear. I mean, I had my own thing too. It was black, although Michael said, you don't need to because you're foreigner. But I said, no, I'm going to wear what they wear.
Okay.
So I was wearing my burqa, and they all like it. And he was being the nephew of this famous ambassador. And we all talk. They all agree. We had our agreement, and then with the final, we went back to Coltina and said, Michael, between your uncle and my burqa, we made progress here. And the World Bank couldn't believe that we had made this agreement, So it was, again, a fascinating experience. But I saw, again, the power of the UN and the fact that Michael is a very savvy diplomat, very respected. The Iranians like him, like the work he did in Iran. So I felt that, and I'm also very devoted. That's why I'm very devoted to the UN, because I think the potential of doing things is amazing.
I see. That's wonderful. Yeah. So I want to turn things back to the creation and the power of the science panels. So, turning towards the science panel for the Amazon, how did the SPA come to be, and what gaps did you hope it would fill when it was first established?
Well, this is, again, very interesting, and it's going back to the UN. What happened is, at that point, I had just started to work with Professor Sachs on SDSN. And one of the reasons why I decided to work with him is because he said to me, we're going to mobilize thousands, how he is, thousands of universities. Actually, we have 2,000 now. Universities around the UN agenda. And I said, that's exciting, you know, because I really believe in the UN, and the fact that, you know, you can mobilize houses of knowledge in the UN agenda was appealing to me. So I just had started to work with him and in SDS, and I still work at the UN a few days a week and a few days with him here. So I used to commute between the UN and here. And at that point, there was, you remember those fires in the Amazon,
Yes.
Big fires, and there was also INPE had declared that there was a lot of fires, and then Bolsonaro fired the head of INPE.
Yeah.
Roberto.
I remember that.
So the scientists were up in arms, and some of them came to Jeff, and they said, we need to do something about it. So he come to me and says, what should we do? And I said, well, let's convene the scientists, because it was coming Climate Week. Let's convene the science and see, maybe we have a dialogue and see what we can do. And it was very interesting, because we were also concerned, you know, about the safety because of Bolsonaro and all the things. But then I thought that the best thing is to have a meeting, not official, but in the UN. And but to have a conference room in the UN, particularly at times of the General Assembly, is not easy, and you really have to have some governments to ask to get you that. And I got a couple of governments to support, and we got our conference room. And there are a number of scientists that were already here for Climate Week. But then we started to look at the list, and we wanted to make sure that they were not just Brazilians, and that we wanted to have more of the other countries, not just climate change, but also biodiversity. But we didn't have any money. And but a fantastic guy who worked with me in this program of the GEF, Nick Sekram, who is now the number 2 in WWF. I called him. I said, Nick, we're going to call some scientists to discuss these issues, but we need money. Can you pay the tickets? He said yes.
Okay.
And he paid the tickets, and we brought, I mean, there were some already here, others come here, and we sat in this conference room at the UN, and we all discussed, and Carlos Nobre was here, and it was very kind of informal, but there were major scientists there. The 2 co-chairs that are current co-chairs were there, and the previous co-chair too. So it was just very interesting, because then they all turned to Jeff, because Jeff has a lot of prestige in the region, as you know, and also in terms of you know, the independent. He said, you know, we should create a science panel. And then he said, Emma, we should create a science panel. I said, okay. So I started from there, and we started to discuss with the scientists, the governance, you know, the independence, you know, a number of things. But it's the way the panel started, and also made sure that it was balanced in terms of disciplines, in terms of the countries, not monopolized for the knowledge of Brazil, that have the other countries as well, have sufficient women scientists, have indigenous people science. From the beginning, we had indigenous people scientists. So that's the way it evolved. And, you know, I have to say, like we always say with Jeff, is thanks to the generosity of the scientists, because, as you know, they work pro bono.
Yeah.
They literally work pro bono, and they work very hard because they have a passion, and the passion is science and is the Amazon.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think it's, you know, part of the work that we do in the Youth Advisory Committee, which we can talk about later, is highlighting this science and really helping people to see how much it goes on behind the scenes on, you know, producing knowledge to help conserve the Amazon. And I think our next question is more related to the other science panels on the Congo Basin and the Borneo. You know, how does that look like right now? Those are more recent panels compared to the Amazon. So I just wanted to know more how they're looking like, and, you know.
And how they evolve?
Yeah, that as well, yes.
Yeah. It's interesting, because what happened is, again, you know, Jeff is pretty brilliant, and he has very good ideas. And so we were going to visit President Lula, and it was just when he won the elections. He was not, I mean, because the change of government is in January, right?
Yes.
And the elections were in October, I think, or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we came to Brazil like in November, right after the elections. He was elected, but he was not yet president.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of the people that were advising him, including, including Mercadante, who was his chief of campaign, who was now the president of the National Development Bank of Brazil. We saw many of them, and we talked. about and Jeff was very, very strong in saying the potential leadership of Brazil in the world and, the areas and so on. And he mentioned that, the tropical forests were an area where Brazil can definitely have a leadership. And we continue with that. And then we felt, that, of course, the Brazilians on their own were doing their things, including, as you know, the last thing is this tropical forest facility, right? They also had a lot of exchange, and they also have embassies in all these countries. It's one of the few countries of the South that have embassies in all the African countries, and including the tropical forest also. So after that, we decided, they will be very good to have science panels also for the second largest forest, which is the Congo Basin, and then Southeast Asia. But we started with Borneo because it was more manageable at this point.
Yeah.
But it's going to be expanding. But also, we already had some experience because, we had already know the issues and how to manage. So Congo could benefit from all that. And we are very happy that, Congo has produced this report. It's the first one ever that the whole Congo produces a report like that. And it's providing the basic statement of where are they from a scientific point of view. And there is a lot. I mean, is like the headlines on the press and the media is the second most important forest is the less research and underinvested.
Yeah.
So the more reason why we need to really work and and build the scientific capacity and so on. But I'm very enthusiastic because we're able to mobilize 170 scientists that
That's
are working
wonderful.
there. And so the idea in Borneo also had like 200 scientists. So altogether, we have mobilized close to 900 scientists to produce these 3 reports. Can you imagine? It's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But also 900 scientists that could inspire younger people, but also can reach policymakers.
Yeah.
And so this is the work we do now. I mean, in the case of the Science Panel of the Amazon, we engage a lot with policymakers. We have just signed an agreement with OTCA. So we can contribute to their discussion. As you know, OTCA is the cooperation of the countries. It's the official governmental agency of the Amazonian countries. But also, we had a number of dialogues with governments, with the financial sector. The BNDES created a fund called Restoration Fund, inspired by the 2 policy briefs that the panel produced. So we can do all that in Congo too. We're not there yet because we just started with the first assessment. But this morning, before I came here, I was in a call with the Scientific Steering Committee of the Congo Basin, and we were already discussing what are the policy briefs we should have.
Yes.
And I suggested that we should have particularly the tipping points because they don't know if they have or not tipping points. The Amazon knows.
Yeah.
At least what are the potential areas of tipping points. The Congo doesn't have because there's not enough research. Maybe they have, maybe they don't have, but they cannot answer that question. So we decided that maybe this is an area that we're going to start working. And the second area is sustainable cities because in the case of as you know, the Science Panel of the Amazon produced these sustainable cities for the Amazon just a few days before the COP30, and we launched it at the Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, where the leader forums was taking place, where 500 governors and mayors from the world came pre-COP. So we had our sustainable cities on the Amazon. But where really a lot of cities are going to be built is in Congo, because Congo has a rapid growing population. So a lot of cities going to be, so this issue of sustainable cities in the tropical forest is critical. So I think we're going to do lots of these kind of things.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think it really highlights the power of the science panels. You've mentioned the importance of translating scientific knowledge into action. And in your experience, what is the key thing to ensure that science is truly influences decision making and decision makers, and guides effective conservation strategies? And do you have any stories or anecdotes where, or additional ones, where the science has really informed policy and be the major background of knowledge for a specific policy?
Yeah, I think obviously it's critical, first of all, that there is science and research independent of policy, right? Because you need to understand things. For instance, you have to understand what is the state of the basin. And that's a lot of scientific research. But so you need to be based on basic science and research. But then you have another layer, which is the next step. Okay, so you find out a number of things. So if you want to make changes, you need to be involved with policy, and you need to be with decision makers. And decision makers speak a different language. So the first thing is to translate all this knowledge into language that they can understand. That's number one. Number two is also to be aware of what are the needs of those policymakers. Because, you know, a lot of policymakers might want to do the right things, but they don't have the answers, and the scientists are doing something else that is not what is relevant to what they want to make. For instance, that's what I say, sustainable cities. Sustainable cities are going to be built, whether we like it or not. They're going to be built because population is growing. So the scientists have to, instead of just looking at some of the issues, they could focus and say, okay, what would be a sustainable city in a tropical forest? So it could give inputs and answers to demands that come from policymakers. So I think this is the key. On one hand, to do, for instance, with the tipping points, understand the tipping points and then reach out to the governments because this is an emergency. Or like in restoration, it's critical to do restoration. You need hundreds and hundreds of $millions of dollars, and that could conserve. And that's why we reached to the National Development Bank of Brazil, who has the investment instruments. But you gave them the knowledge and the possibility. We are having a lot of dialogues with the financial sector in the different countries, providing the risk. These are the risks, and those risks would affect all your business. But those also are the opportunities. You can the opportunities investing on social bioeconomy, investing on cities, investing in sustainable infrastructure. So I think is that kind of a bridge. On one hand, finding issues that are critical, but at the same time listening from the other side.
I see.
And I think the UN is fantastic in that because you're forced. But also, you know, I was talking to the scientists when we were thinking, he said, this, and I said, this is not a political group, this is a scientific group. But we're also not politically deft.
Yes.
And that's the key. So you have to hear. You have to hear. But you have to do your own independence. But you have to hear. You have to see what are the political leaders trying to do. And I think that's, for me, that's the key.
Yeah. Okay. That's wonderful. Yeah. I think finding that balance. And we just came back from COP30. So I wanted to ask a question about that. You know, we've been talking about science and policy was really on the highlights the past few weeks. And then how do you expect the key outcomes of COP30, especially the most positive ones, which are a lot of them, to shape the priorities and negotiations heading to the next COP31?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we got to see the COPs as a process, right? And I think the most important thing is that, you know, first of all, as a Brazilian, you should be very proud that Brazil is always being home to very interesting negotiations on sustainability. I feel that, you know, it's kind of, I always used to say that Rio is the capital of sustainability. That's where 92 was adopted.
Yes.
Yeah, and 92 was a major conference, and that's where climate change, the Convention of Climate Change, the Convention of Biodiversity, and the certification were adopted. So that 92 is 33 years ago. That was the beginning of a big process. So then, you know, then you have the climate change Secretariat, the IPCC that work on the science of climate, the global science of climate. Then you have the Biodiversity Convention that work on the ecosystems and the biodiversity of global. Then the Convention of Desertification working on all these issues. So this is a process. So then you start with the climate change, and then with many negotiations, but the dialogue evolved and the influence evolved. You know, when I took my course on climate change, my friends here, and they're not dumb, they tell me, "Oh, are you going to study meteorology?" I said, "No, climate change." Clueless, and now it's not the same.
Yeah,
they might agree, they might disagree, they might think, yeah, but what? But people know that this. And I give a lot of credit to the UN, the Secretariat, and the dialogue that started with all these COPs. And the COPs have been evolving, new issues have been adopted because there's more science too that, you know, incorporate. For instance, we're dealing with resilience. That was not part of the initial convention. We're dealing with adaptation because we see that there are issues changing, so adaptation has become big on the agenda. We're dealing with issues of the islands because we are seeing the impact on the islands, so that's become big on the agenda. So I see all that evolution on the COPs. And I would say that the fact that in 2 COPs ago it was adopted the transition away from fossil fuels, it was important. It's not happening, but it's important because I tell you one thing, the writing is on the wall. And these companies are not stupid. They're going to lobby like they lobby everywhere, but they know the writing is on the wall, so they're also getting ready. And even the countries that produce are getting ready. So one has to see it in that perspective, because when you see that there is consensus at the highest political level, but also at the civil society level, companies, people, they start thinking. And so I think, again, that was an important thing. What do I see that was so remarkable in the COP30? Number one, it was the Rainforest COP. And that was fantastic. It was fantastic. It was great. That's why we're so proud that we had those 3 reports. But also because you saw the rainforest, and the rainforest was very present in the COP, as you know. It was rainy. Yes. We got everything, right?
Yeah, it was very warm and humid.
Very humid. It was really present.
Yeah.
It was present in the food. It was present, and also it was present with all the indigenous people. It was amazing. It was also a COP that took place in a democratic country, and that's important because they allowed. And they invited everybody. But Brazilians, they like to invite everybody to the party. So this was the case. Yeah, it was the case. Everybody was invited. And even in the rough moments, the COP president negotiated, and they agreed with the protesters. I mean, by the way, I have a highest respect for the Brazilian diplomacy. And I thought it was amazing how they show how they handle this situation very well. And we should not forget that there was a lot of interest against this COP. And the fact that they came with a consensus despite of active and militant against the COP is fantastic.
Yeah.
But also it's very important because it changed the atmosphere of the COP. So I think the next COP is not going to be able not to invite those massive groups that the Brazilians have invited.
Yes.
Because now they like it and they're going to be present in the next one.
Yeah.
And this, is going to be the indigenous groups, it's going to be the civil society, and Brazil with, with the stock taking that they took place, those dialogues all over the world. They went listening to everybody. That is a fantastic process. I participated in 2. I participated in London and a little bit of the one in New York. And it's great, So, they're going to have to build on that. They cannot just drop it. Second thing, I think, is that Brazil already said that the roadmap for the fossil fuel transition away from the fossil fuel will continue. And they're going to continue leading on that. There's going to be dialogue that will evolve maybe for the next COP or for next. Sooner the better. Yeah. But we're not going to drop the ball. And so we're going to there will be a transition away from the fossil fuels, and there will be investment on the tropical forest. And also the most important thing is that, I say this morning I was talking with our Congo scientists, that the most wonderful and inspiring thing, at least for me, is that we could be part of a transformative model of development. We are in an obsolete model that creates tipping points environmentally, that creates tipping points socially. We need to change that model. It has to be a sustainable model that is in peace with nature, is in peace, that we embrace many cultures, and they embrace the forest and nature. And I think the tropical forest could make that new model, with new technologies, with science, so it's exciting. So that's what I think would probably, again, this COP will contribute to all that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think I feel the same way. Being part of it, I was there for a few days, and I feel that the general feeling around COP was mostly positive.
Yeah.
Even on the rough times, there was this sense of hope that I couldn't see. I wasn't part of the previous COPs. This was my first one. But I couldn't see that much from the outside from the other COPs. This one brought this sentiment of, or brought back the sentiment of hope.
Yes, I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And also it's fun, I took a couple of scientists from the Congo to my last day, Sunday, and I took them to to go to that famous ice cream parlor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I took them, and and they didn't know the names of the fruits because so I started to order, cupasuas, and they were saying, we're going to have the same she's having. They were delighted to discover these fruits, So so it was wonderful to have it I think in Belén. And Belén is a beautiful city too. It's an old city, It's on the mouth of the Amazon. It's fantastic.
Yes. Wonderful. We are now transitioning to the last section of our interview, which is your guidance and inspiration for young people. You've worked closely with youth across the Amazon, especially through the Youth Advisory Committee from the SPA, which I'm a part of it. And what has inspired you or surprised you the most about working with young leaders in this region?
Well, I think very importantly, this is a young region. I mean, it's not as young as Congo, but it's a young region. And it's a region that has started many things, It's a region that, the whole democracy in Latin America, there was a big demonstrations and fight by young people. Yeah, yes, leaders as well, of course. So young people are always been a source of inspiration for me because I think they could start and they transform many things. So when we established the Science Panel of the Amazon, and we felt that the scientists could inspire the new leadership, the new scientists of the region, and so that was the idea originally. Let's get young people that join the panel, but also that serve as an inspiration for science, to be scientists, because a lot of people like to, a lot of our bright people want to be in finance instead of being in science. So I think it's very important that we have brilliant people on science, because that's the way we can transform, and make sure that our superpower on biodiversity generates development for the region. So that's the reason why I was very motivated that, and particularly having so many talent scientists in the panel. It's unbelievable, and they could serve as inspiration for young people, and also get young leaders that could inspire more young people in all this field. So that's the reason why I thought it was very important to have the Youth Advisory Committee, and we got support to establish then, and I'm happy that it's working very well. You are very active, and you're doing many fascinating things. And when we met in Belén, you came already with a pipeline of more ideas. Yeah. So I think it's fantastic. So so that's, and we are going to establish one in Congo now. We're at the very beginnings, obviously, but even at the very beginnings, we'll consult with you because you already have the experience of establishing. So we'll do that too. Yeah,
wonderful. Looking forward to that. And for young people who want to contribute to sustainability, climate action, and scientific leadership, young people who've been doing this or who want to get started, what advice would you give to them as they begin their own journey in these fields?
Well, I think obviously it's very important. I mean, there is a role for advocacy and activism. I'm not against that. But I very much think that the young people should be, if they want to be seriously involved in this, should be scientists. And and science is hard work, as you know, and it takes a long time. So I think it's important that they have, the skills and the knowledge, and that's number one. Number two is that, they get engaged, and they engage, and in general, scientists are pretty generous. So engage with mentors. Like, I think in my career, there were so many people that were so generous with me, including my professor that sent me to apply to the UN, and the other one that I was late, and she took me under her wing and taught me everything. Yeah. So, I think you should also be linking and working with scientists, and helping scientists, and they're very generous. So that's number two. And number three is be very connected with your local communities. Whatever your neighborhood, your local community, your cities, because then you see what are the needs. I was in a panel during Climate Week here, and there was a businessman which is the special envoy for the private sector from the COP presidency. I forgot his name. Very interesting. He's a very large investor in the Amazon. And he was saying something very interesting. He said, very important that you want to conserve the forest and talk about it. But you also have to talk, because when you talk to the people in the Amazon, the 47 million people that live in the Amazon, they worry about education. They worry about health.
Yeah.
Those are their preoccupations. So I think that's why I think it's important that the scientists also listen, what are the real needs of these communities, so you can merge that. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. I think young people can really bridge this possible gap between scientists and the communities, working with both.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. And I have second to last question, our last question to the main content of sustainability. Looking ahead, what gives you hope about the future, whether in terms of the Amazon, the science panels, or the next generation of people who are stepping up to shape these many regions' future? What gives you hope?
I think number one is that science provides evidence, and people are susceptible to evidence and to knowledge. And that's why it's so important. Also, that scientists are more and more open to be engaged with leadership, with political leadership. And as again, you have to be open. You just cannot say this is what it is. You have to open. You have to enter into a dialogue. So that's number two. Number three is the fact that there is more and more a consensus. I think of the issues. So it's not that everybody or the majority of people know that fossil fuels are a problem. So we're going to phase out. So that gives me confidence, because more and more, and I talk to people that are normal people, and they know that this is an issue. More and more people are aware of the importance of nature for their lives, for their well-being. So I think, again, this is something that gives me... And also, they are discovering the richness of nature. I remember when I started to study in Spain, and fruit was very expensive.
Yes.
And the fruit that you had in is Mediterranean fruit, so it was pears and apples. And I used to miss my fruit.
Yes.
My fruit from Latin America. And my fruit from Latin America was only in very special stores, extremely expensive, that I couldn't afford as a student. And when my father came to visit me, he said, what would you need, And I said, I would like to eat more fruit. So I had my allowance, and he gave me an incremental allowance for my fruit. And I used to buy mangoes and chirimoyas and all the things that, now and they are not as expensive as they used to be. But I think the fact that the whole world is discovering the richness that come from the different... Asia has different fruits, different vegetables. We have different fruits, different vegetables. And the world is discovering, and then discovering the value and the importance of conservation. Who wants to live in a world that you eat only apples, pears, and bananas? Not me.
Yeah.
And the majority is the same. So they want to see, the richness. And I think that also gives me... the cultures, the same thing. Discovering the different cultures. It's fascinating, and I think... that and there is easier communication now. It's much more accessible to.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I agree with the fruits. That's what I miss the most about home.
It's the fruits, right?
It is. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to ask a last question, not related to the topic, but a very interesting one. You've mentioned before about some stories you have with Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I just wanted to know if you have more stories or an additional anecdote with him, because I think most people watching the episode know who he is and the importance that he has for, the entire Latin America, not only in literature. So knowing someone who was actually with him is actually pretty incredible.
Well, there were many, many, many stories, because as I was telling you, he's a storyteller. He was a storyteller.
Yeah.
So he will tell you little stories of everything. You got into the elevator and he will tell you an elevator story. But I think perhaps one of the stories that, was very powerful for me was the fact that, he had this passion for young writers. And he had the patience for young writers. And I remember we were walking at the UN, and he was like, beyond like a movie star, right?
Yes.
Beyond. So everybody will gravitate towards him. And there were a couple of young ones that came with his book, I have his book too, 100 Years of Solitude. I went, Gabo, can you sign the book?
Yes.
And he signed it for me, and he designed a little daisy. And for me, I'll show it to you. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he had the patience to these young people to talk about writing and the fact of writing and the discipline of writing. And I told my son that. Garcia Marquez got up at 5 in the morning, and he wrote every day until noon.
Wow.
Every day, whether he was traveling or not traveling. And then he engaged with the world. And the wife told me that nobody could interrupt him.
Yes.
And she said, I used to leave the food in front of the room, so maybe he would get up and get something to eat. He wrote every day. So that's what he told to the young scientists. You want to be a writer, it's not just being creative. You have to have the discipline, which means write every day. Like he write until noon, and then he did other things, engaged with the family. When he was famous, he had media, whatever. So I think it was good because and the young ones will look at him and and say, well, he's a writer, right? He knows what he's telling us. So it was wonderful. So that was a great story. But the other story is really the importance of what he put, this thing that connected immediately the Amazon with the old cultures of the Amazon. I thought it was amazing. Even the other people didn't know that all this ceramic in the continent is in the Amazon. Not in the Maya region, not in the Inca region, which are the most known, but in the Amazon, which is great, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's quite amazing.
And he knew.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, most of the scientists didn't know. But he knew.
He knew, yeah. I think we now have a better understanding of archaeology in the region.
Yeah.
But that's very much recent.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And Gabo, we love you.
We love you. I love Gabo.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Gabo too.
Yes. Best book I've ever read was 100 Years of Solitude.
It's the best book ever.
Yes.
And there's another one that you should read, which is called Nobody Writes the Colonel.
Okay.
It's very short.
Yeah.
And it's the origin, in a way, of 100 Years of Solitude.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And the other one that is a masterpiece is La Crónica de la Muerte Anunciada.
I have that one.
You have that. Because it is amazing, and you see the amazing writer he is, because in the first page, you already know the beginning and the end of the story. So, but you still need to read it. And you don't understand why you're reading it, because you already know the end. People make it to you so you can reach to the end. No, you already know the beginning and the end and the first page. It is a fascinating. It's just, I think, the only master writer could do, right?
Yes. And if I have a recommendation for anyone, read his speech when he
got the Nobel Prize.
Exactly.
I have that copy. It's just amazing, right?
Please read that. It's amazing in any language you want.
Yeah, and it's translated in all the languages.
Yes.
The UN translated in all the UN languages.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, I think.
And I have to tell one more story about El Gabo. There is a famous expedition that went from Ecuador. I forgot. I don't think it's Guayaquil, but it went from one of the ports there. And they went. There were these Cubans that went from there in canoes like the Indians used to use, to Habana, and that it was to provide the point that they already visited the indigenous people. They already visited the Caribbean before Columbus arrived. So that was his thesis, to prove that.
Yes.
And Gabo, of course, liked that. He thought it was cool. So what happened is that he mobilized Fidel to support that. And this expedition that went from Ecuador to Habana, it was the farewell to the exhibition was given by Guayasamín, which is one of the major painters of Ecuador. He's famous. And he's related to one of the scientists, Juan Guayasamín, which is in our panel. And he didn't know the story. I told him the story. I said, that he was there saying goodbye to the expedition. And then when the expedition arrived, Gabo was there with Fidel waiting for them.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And I like that to be on our website.
Yes.
So I said already to our people that they should get the documentation and we should put it in the website.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I would love to see that there. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you so much. It was great. So we're going to work on the Congo youth.
Yes, we will. We'll keep an eye on that. So thank you everyone for watching. This was another episode of our podcast, Conversations for the Amazon We Want. Today with Emma Torres. I'm Gustavo Nascimento, your host for today. And I just want to thank everyone who has been watching this series and who is looking forward to the next episodes. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day, and thank you, Emma, again.
Obrigada.
Obrigado a todos.
Obrigada.
This podcast is an initiative of the Youth Advisory Committee of the Science Panel for the Amazon. The Science Panel for the Amazon benefits from the generous support of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, and the World Bank, with financial support from the Global Environmental Facility. The Youth Advisory Committee is especially grateful for the generous support provided to its work by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation.